Oh, that's not good.
Got a Honda in the shop and the window fell down and won't go back up. And now when you try to raise it with the switch, it makes a lot of crackling and popping sounds. Usually that means that the window regulator came apart and needs to be replaced. So let's go see if we can't get it fixed. This is what we're working on today, a 2001 Honda Civic Coupe, and the window in this driver's door is the one giving us the issue. If you watched a previous video on this vehicle, you know that I was the one who was operating the window when it dropped down and went out. So I'm going to go ahead, and if this thing can be fixed, I'm going to fix it for the owner for free. I'm not going to charge him. Now to get back there, we're going to have to get this door panel off. Typically, Honda door panels are held in with screws over here by the handle, and then right here where you pull, there's usually some screws in there, either this way or both. But in the case of this, hopefully you can see on the video, this thing's definitely seen better days. The screws that are holding this don't appear to be doing it anymore. You can see that this is broken right here and it's pulled apart right here. So this door panel, yeah, it's definitely past its prime. I also noticed the door locks don't work, at least the electric part, you gotta do them by hand. So this thing, yeah, definitely we gotta be careful with it so we don't break it any further. First thing we'll do is pop this little trim piece out, because I have a habit of forgetting them when I try to take the door panel off. So now I try to take them off first if I can. Typically we can just grab it and just pop it out of the clip. This particular one I can't unplug. Some of them I can just unplug right here and it makes it easy. This one I can't. So we'll just leave it up out of the way right now. And at least we should be able to lift the door panel off and that won't get in our way. Alright, now we got to get the screws that are hidden behind this plastic little cap there. Typically, there's a little notch right up the top there. We can just put our screwdriver in, press down, and then usually I'll just put my finger right there and just kind of press in, and that will force it out like that. So that's all I'm going to do. And that exposes the two screws hidden behind there. We'll just go ahead and pop those out. And for screws on Hondas, I typically like to use vessel screwdrivers like this one here. After we get the two screws out, some of these door handles we have to push forward and then pop out. This one we just kind of have to pry from the front and then maneuver around the electrical connector for our door locks that's right there. So usually we can just do that. And then you can see that there is a little plastic clip right there, so we don't want to pry from this end. We definitely need to bring this end out first like that, and then we can get it out. And usually we have to go up. We have to kind of maneuver it up around this electrical connector right here. And then we also have this rod that's connecting it. So you got a couple things that are going to fight you to get this thing out, but usually we can just maneuver it up and out like that. To disconnect the electrical connector, there's a little tab right in the back that I have to press like that, and then I can pull it down. I can't do it and hold the camera, but all I'm going to do is press that little tab right there where my finger is, and then I'll pull the electrical connector out. Now we just have to get that clip off. Sometimes you can pop it off with a tool, other times we can just kind of reach in there with our finger. That one's a little tough. See if we can get it off. There, I popped it off. So we just need to rotate it like that, and then we can get that rod out. Now all we have to do is lift the rod right out. Now we'll just reach in there, see if we can't pull this rod out. There, you probably couldn't see it, but it's just clipped in like that. Now we have to get the screws that hold this area in. The first one we'll get is right under that cover right there. So we should be able to just put a screwdriver in like that and just kind of pop this cover off like that. So we're going to go from the front towards the back because there's a little hinge right there. And we'll pop that screw out. Now we're going to have to pop this piece off right here. We can see there's a line right here, and so we can reach in with a tool and just pop it up from the front because there are clips like this in the back, and so we don't want to break those off. This is how it's set up on the coupe. We have to take this top part off. On the sedans, this plastic piece down here pops off, so we have to pull that off. So it just depends on what vehicle you have, how we take this apart, but they're all pretty much the same in that they have screws in this area holding this on, and they're for strength, so when you pull the door we won't do this stuff right here and start breaking it. But obviously the screws in here are messed up, so I don't know what I'm gonna find. You can see there's our little tab we don't want to break. But yeah, just any kind of tool like this. This just happened to be the one that was on top of my toolbox there. Just sneak in there and that'll help you lift it up. And then we got a electrical connection we'll have to disconnect. And sometimes if they have not been removed for a while, they're jammed in there. Ouch, that's gonna leave a mark. Yeah, that one got me. I hate dealing with the connectors on there sometimes because they're so tight, but I'm gonna have to put a band-aid on that, I guess. All fixed. That's not the first time I've dinged my fingers up trying to disconnect electrical connectors behind a door panel, so just be careful when you're pulling this stuff out. Alright, let's check things out. What do we got in here? Any French fries or anything good? No, it doesn't look like it, but somebody did leave us a quarter. Well, that's nice. I do see a piece of plastic from a clip down right in there, so that's typically not good. And let's see, maybe you need a flashlight to see. Right in there, there's one screw there, and then there's another screw down there. And just looking real quick, I can see, hopefully you can tell too, by pulling on it, I can see that it's broken right there. So that screw is not doing anything. So my guess is somebody probably at one point when they took this apart didn't realize you have to take this off and get those two screws. And they just ripped that door panel apart, and that's why we see a bunch of carnage everywhere. So I will still pop the two screws out, but it looks like they're not doing anything. There's the first one, that's what it looks like. And the second one. They're both the same. Now, the rest of the door panel is typically held on with clips all the way around, but you know, judging from this one, I'm not sure how many clips are still intact. But usually you just have to try to find a place where you can get your fingers behind there. And if you can't, then you just use a tool like this and just kind of sneak back in there, and then we just pop it out. Usually the best place to start I've found in these Hondas is in the front over here. We can just kind of pop them out. That one's definitely seen better days. And usually more than two will pop, but we're going to have them all the way around. And then we kind of just want the door hanging like this. And sometimes, you know, it looks like this has been damaged. This little foam piece that's inserted back in there could fall out like this, but usually they won't fall out like that. Now if we did everything right, we should be able to just lift it up off the top here. And there we go. We just have to be careful. Some models will have a light down here and we'll have to disconnect it. But it looks like we're good here. And that little foam piece is supposed to be glued on right here, but you can see that it's become dislodged. And now's a good time to check our clips that hold this door panel in and see if they're still intact. That one looks good, that's good, that's good. This one's missing, so it may still be in the actual metal part of the door. That one's missing. That one's good, and that one looks good. So it looks like we're missing a couple of them. Some of them, although they may still be in the door, may not be holding because only two of them popped out. But that could be because, you know, people pulling on the door handle, they pop out and they never pushed them back in. So that could just be a byproduct of the screws being broken, this plastic being broken off and not holding anymore. And here's where it goes. So yeah, somebody at some point broke that off. I found both of the plastic parts and you can see they're both clearly broken off. And this happens when you leave the screws in and just try to pry the door panel off. And now, I mean, these are what hold that door panel on so it's secure when you pull on it. Now these are broken, so this thing will never be secure like it was. And if you're curious, this piece glues on like that. You can see we have our arrow pointing up, just like this one. Left, up. Left, up. Now we have this dust and moisture shield to contend with. Now this one, of course, has seen better days. Somebody just cut it and left it there, so we don't have to do much. We could actually work around it just as it is. But if yours hasn't been messed with like this, typically a lot of times we can just pull it off the glue like that. Sometimes you'll be okay. Out here in the desert, I don't have very good luck with that. This stuff just tends to just disintegrate and go everywhere. It just flakes like that. So what I typically do, I just cut it with a little razor blade right along the edge there, and then I'll tape it with some all-weather tape. I'll probably do something like that with this. I'll probably fix it back up, but that's usually how I do it. But in this case, it looks like we could just pull this up out of the way and we can do what we need to do. And for the rest of it, all we have to do is just kind of pull it out of our way like that. And it looks like pretty much everything we need is out of the way. I don't think we need to do anything. But the window motor itself is right there with those 3 bolts. And then the regulator portion, which is a cable style, we got the 2 bolts down here and the 2 bolts here, and then we have the 2 bolts that are holding the glass on. And if we can see them, they're right back there. So we're going to have to get those off. Now on this model, it's not open down here. So where those bolts are attaching the regulator to the glass back here, we can't get to it easily. And you know, they're right in this position about right here when the window is all the way down. If the window was stuck all the way up, which happens sometimes, they would be right here. And if you try to reach in through here to get them, you may damage the tint, because you can see this window is tinted. We may be able to reach around down here to do it, but what I try to do is I try to get the glass up to the position right here, and then we can get to the bolts right through here. So somehow you have to get this glass up here. Now in this case, I can just lift it up and I can move it because the regulator cable, all that crap has fallen apart. That's what happened on this vehicle. I don't even have to see it. I've seen it enough where there's a cable, you know, that kind of almost looks like a bow and arrow, and so it winds up one way and then it winds up the other way, and that's what just moves it up and down. And so what happens is the cable snaps, or the assembly just falls apart, or the cable unwinds inside the motor, and what it does is it causes the window fall all the way down to the bottom here, and that's what happened to this one. So what do I do in situations where I can't move that window, but I need to get it right here? If the window is stuck in one position and won't move, you try doing it with the, you know, the button or whatnot, and it won't move, what I like to do is the tap test. We just tap on the motor right here. You can just see the motor sticking through right here. We just tap while we're pressing the button. So we would have to take our buttons for the window, plug it back in, and then we would either hold it up or down and just tap. And a lot of times we can get it to move a couple times just by doing that, and we move it into position, we're good to go. If I can't do that, and I'll have to show you once I get it off the vehicle, what I do is I try to reach around and cut the cabling where the, you know, that holds this window regulator in place. Now if the window's all the way up, which is typically when you have to do it, if the window's stuck all the way up, you need to secure it, you know, with tape or tools like I'll show you what I use, but we need to hold that window up because as soon as we cut that cable, it's going to fall and we don't want it to break. When it's down like this and if it's stuck, it's a lot harder to get to that cable to cut. It can be done, but it's definitely more difficult, and we take a chance on scratching the tint. So it's kind of a last resort of having to cut it. What I found a lot of times, I can just tap that motor while I'm holding the window switch, and I can get it to move one final time and I can get it into position. So those are some tricks you got to use to try to get those bolts right here where we can get to them. Now what I'm going to do, seeing as I can move this window because it's, you know, messed up, I should be able to lift it up. If I can't, I may have to manipulate the switch a little bit to get that regulator to move, because it will move but it won't lift the window, but it may be in my way where I have to do that. But I'll get it up here and then I'll pull those 10mm bolts out. It should just be two 10mm bolts holding the glass onto it. And then I'll raise it all the way up and just secure it with these right here. These just suction around and grab it. I like to use these tools. I've also used tape too. You can use whatever you have. But that's what I'm going to try to do on this one. This one wants to fight. That second bolt wanted to fight me a little bit, but there they are. This clip, of course, it's broken on the other side on the door panel, but we can see it's definitely had better days, evidence of somebody prying where they shouldn't have been. Okay, now we got to get our window regulator out. And like I said, the track lines up right here, and we have two bolts to it right there, two bolts right here. And then there's cabling that goes across over here. And then there's our motor, and we got 3 bolts to the motor. What we want to look for is anywhere that's keyed. You can see it's keyed right there. Any places we see that, we don't actually have to take the bolts all the way out. All we have to do is loosen them up, and we can just lift it up and pop it through the little keyhole. These down here, they're not keyed, so we have to remove those. Up here, we have to remove this one. So right there, that one's keyed. And these 3 are keyed. And what that does is when we go to pull the new one in or push the new one in, we can hang it right here. We leave a bolt right there on the new one, and we leave bolts on the new motor over here, and it allows us to just reach in and hang it, and then we can get everything lined up. Makes it a lot easier. So we'll take it off the same way that we're going to put it back in. We'll take out the bolts that we need to, and we'll only loosen the ones that are keyed. And just for the sake of filming, I'm just going to go ahead and unplug this little tweeter here and get it up out of the way. If I wasn't filming, I would just leave it right where it is, but it's easy to pull off, and now I don't have to worry about it getting in the way of filming. But we have to contend with the electrical connection to our motor, which is right here. So we can unplug it like that, and it's clipped into place, and typically we can just kind of pry them off. Any good regulator typically will come with that clip, so we shouldn't have to reuse it. You can slide it off this way. If you pushed it like that, typically they will slide off, and you can reuse the clip if you need to. And if we follow this around, we can feel that it goes right to our motor. In fact, I can feel some carnage right here. There's the cabling, and you can see this little spring right here that is popped out. So we know for sure that our regulator's broke, and I see this quite often, so that's why I pretty much knew what was going on. But right here, that's the cable we would have to cut if we needed to move that window. Like I said, we just got to be careful. If we're cutting that cable, the window's going to drop. So that's a last resort. But this right here definitely shows us what the problem was and why we need to replace it. Now they're all loose, we should be able to maneuver it out. And while I'm thinking of it, don't mix up the bolts that are attaching the regulator to the frame here with the 2 bolts that attach the glass to the regulator. They're usually different lengths, so pay attention to that. Now we'll just lift it up and pop them out through the little keyholes. Whoops, and that's what it looks like. and that's how they typically break a lot, right there. Either, well, both of them or one, but that's what happens. And like I said, if I need to cut the cable, I'll just reach in there and cut it wherever I can reach it. There's the part number for our new window regulator. Now typically coupes and sedans are going to have different part numbers, so make sure you're getting the right part. Of course, we want to compare our old part with our new one, make sure everything lines up. In this case, looks like we're good to go. Now don't be fooled. You can see this style right here, and our new one has this little plate right here. They put those plates on there so they can use the same motor for different applications. They just change out this plate and it gives them the correct mounting. So that's fine, don't worry about that. In this one, we have the bolts already installed, but there's no bolts over here. And so what we'll have to do, we'll take that bolt, put it right here so we can drop it back into place, and then we'll just reuse the old ones. Now typically the two bolts that go right here and the two bolts that go right here are the same length, but on this one, these two are slightly shorter, these two are slightly longer, so we'll keep them the same way. Now the regulator sits in there like this with the motor over there, and so what we're going to do, we just kind of fold it up like that a little bit, and we'll just kind of snake it through and then just drop it into place, and hopefully we won't drop it inside the door panel. Come on. There we go. Sometimes they want to fight you a little bit. Now we want to make sure that this drops down into place like it is right here, and if everything is lined up properly, you can see our holes down there pretty darn close. We just have to move it slightly. Over here, same thing, that one's pretty much dead on. So now what I'll do is I'll put these bolts in place, and then I'll reach around and grab the wiring and get it connected. I've found if I don't do that, it's easy to bump this off and everything drops down. So we'll go ahead and just secure it so it won't fall off. Alright, so the slightly longer bolt goes up top here, and the two shorter ones will go on the bottom. Now we can just reach around, grab our wiring harness wherever it is. There it is right there. And this is where it would go. Now that I'm looking at this, that's the wrong style of plug for that. And typically the way these go is this little clip down here clips into the back side. So it clips in from the back right here, or in some area. That's usually how most of these Hondas are. They'll clip in the back right there, and then this will come up and then clip right there. But this is the wrong style clip. It's not really going to work. So we'll grab the one off the old one. And then this is in the wrong spot, so it won't work anyway where it is. So what we'll do, we'll just zip tie it to this wire harness right here and we'll be good to go. What we don't want it to do is flop around and get hit by the window. See if I can pop it off one-handed. There we go. And there, we'll just put this one on the new one if it fits. If it doesn't, then we'll have to make do with what we have. And it fits in there, so we're good to go. Now we can plug it in and snap it into place. So we're good to go there, and we'll just we'll get that zip tied together. Alright, I cut that clip and got out of the way. It's not doing anything. We'll just go ahead and zip these two together. Well, that sucks. That thing just snapped right in half. I don't think I've ever had a zip tie do that. Not a brand new one. Try it again. And I can't stress enough how important it is to cut zip ties flush. They make special zip tie cutters like this one. They work great. It cuts it flush and you won't get cut on that, because if you think it sucks just getting a little scratch like this, wait till you open up your hand or your arm by reaching through and getting cut on the sharp edge of a zip tie. It sucks. Now we'll just go ahead and snug up all the bolts. And I'll just verify with my wrench real quick that they're tight. Okay, now we'll remove these and drop the window down onto the window regulator. If Dorman did everything right, everything will line up and we can just put our bolts in. If Dorman didn't do it right, we're going to have to plug the switch in and move the window so that we can get it in the correct position to get our bolts in. You just have to be careful. We don't want to drop this window like that. You gotta be careful when we get it right in. And it looks like Dorman missed a little bit. We'll have to drop the window down. Now, if we did everything right, those bolt holes should be lined up, and we're looking pretty good. Now, we'll use the two longer bolts that are used to attach the glass to the window regulator. And what I like to do, I'll just use an extension with a 10mm socket, because these are all 10mm bolts. And we'll just use this to get it going. We want to get them started by hand. This is not the time to just put it up there with a power tool and zip them in, because you'll cross thread it. It's just little pot metal in there. We don't want to damage it and then have to buy new stuff. Alright, now they're finger tight. I'll just back them out a hair, because what we want to do whenever we install this glass on a Honda, we want to push it to the rear. We want to make sure it's all the way back to the rear as far as it'll go, and then we can knock them or tack them down. Just get them snug, but that window should be secure and it won't move. Now that we have everything installed and secure, let's test it before we button everything back up. Now, I'm just going to take some all-weather repair tape like this, and this is what I use. I don't recommend using packing tape or duct tape or anything like that. Use all-weather tape. and whenever you go to remove it, it's just as good as the day you put it on, and especially lasts out here in the desert. But I'll just go ahead and tape it up into place the best I can. The problem I think we're going to run into with this foam structural piece is, and this may be the cause of our problem to begin with, you can see these holes are all wallowed out, and obviously this is glued on to the door panel, and it sits in there about just like this. And so there's just enough of a channel right there where the window comes down. The problem is with this door being loose, and I'm going to try to secure it, but I don't know if I can the way it's broken. You know, flexing the door will cause this to flex, and all this has to do is just move over a little bit, and then the window's going to hit it, and it's going to break the new window regulator. So I don't think we're going to be able to use this or put it back in, because it's just going to cause more issues. So you can see I started tacking it back into place. I'm going to go ahead and plug the tweeter in before I forget. It's all put back together. It's not perfect, but certainly better than it was. And due to the fact, you know, these pegs are in kind of bad shape, I'm going to leave this off because, you know, we got our anchor points broken right here. Our door panel has seen better days. It's broken right there, so it's going to flex a lot. So if I glue this back into place, I know it's just going to pop off. It's going to break that window regulator again, so we're going to leave it off. Now we know, looking at our door panel, we're missing 2 clips. Well, there's one of them right there, and so we're going to have to rip this one out, and it's already broken, so we're going to destroy that. So I have some new clips. I'll put these in the door panel. We'll get that one out, and then we can hang our door panel. I'll go ahead and I'll take this one, put it here, take a new one, put this one here, come on, and we'll put the other new one over here, and that way we'll spread out the new ones and the old ones. I have several different tools to take these old clips out. I'll just use one of them. I don't think it really matters too much which one. I ended up using these, just reach in there and just ripped it out. It actually didn't break anymore. I'm kind of surprised, but the end is chewed up, so it wasn't going to work again. I'm going to roll the window down, make it a little bit easier to get over this lip. Alright, now we'll fight it, see if we can't set it back into place. It's the door lock that's a pain to get around. That and this over here. Alright, now before we tack it home, we want to make sure that this is all the way down, and this wire for our door lock is coming up through here. This one's here. Everything else should kind of line up, and I can feel that the clips are wanting to go in the hole, so I know that I'm pretty much lined up. If I feel any resistance, I need to stop and figure out what's going on. Typically what happens is this right here did not drop all the way down, so then you got to stop, fix it, and then go forward. But once we're satisfied with that, we can go ahead and clip it back in. Now normally we'd go ahead and put our screws back in, and that would secure where the door pull is, but we know ours is broken, and so, you know, we could try to put that back, but it's not going to do anything. So what I'm going to do is try to fix it, and I just dropped my stuff. But I'm going to use a washer. This is a 1-inch wide washer, and that hole is 3/16. So here's our original screw, so that would fit. But the problem is, because the washer is going to sit back out here, that screw is going to be too short, so we need a longer screw. And so I went and looked around and I grabbed a couple screws, and these should work. This is 1.25 inches, so that should be long enough. We can look at the difference, and they're both number 10, so this is a number 10 size thread, and so is this one. We want to keep it the same, otherwise it's not going to grab good. So that's how I'm going to fix it. I'm going to put it through like that, and I'll do it for both and see how it works. Now remember, we're just threading this into plastic. We don't need to kill it. As soon as I feel it snug up, that's good. I already got the other one in. That feels much better. That's not going to go anywhere. Here's a view up close of the fix. These 1-inch wide washers just clear everything, so it clears under here, and yet it's still wide enough to cover the hole. And of course, you know, we don't want it to protrude out too far, because when we put our pull handle in, we don't want it to hit. So these seem to be pretty flush. I think we're going to be okay. Same thing over here. And we have less room over here. We're right up against the plastic here, and we can see the outline of where that pull handle is going to go, and we don't want our washer to protrude past that. Hopefully it covers it. We may be, I mean, if you look real close, we may be able to see it once we put everything back in, but I'd rather just be able to see that and everything is secure than just have it flopping around and continue to break like it was. But I think this is going to be a good fix, and we should be good to go. And while I'm thinking of it, I used 1.25 inch screws because I measured the old ones, and I measured the depth of this cavity right here. 1.25 inches seemed to work good, because what I didn't want to do is put too long of screws in there and then have problems with the window, because if you put too long of screws in there, they could hit the window and scratch it or crack it or things like that. And so we don't want to, you know, create more problems trying to fix this problem. Well, I guess we can go ahead and see if this thing will fit back in here. Of course, you know, hopefully it looks like we should have clearance here. We do have to contend with this little clip that goes right there. And over here, you know, this might just be touching our washer right here, but hopefully we got enough clearance where it won't bother it. Alright, I think that looks pretty good. If I look really close, maybe I can just barely see the edge of that washer trying to press back onto the felt here. But you know, sitting right here, I can't see anything. So I think we're good to go. I think that's a pretty good fix. Now we just got to get the screw back in there. Well, let's test it out. That's a lot better than it was. That's pretty solid. I'll take that. Now we'll go ahead and get the door handle back in. I'll just reach in there and I'll drop that rod in and snap this shut. See if I can do it with my fingers. If not, I'll use a tool. There, just dropped it down and snapped it over. And we'll plug this back in. We'll go ahead and put these two screws back in. We'll pop our cover back into place. And we'll snap this back into place. Alright, now that it's all back together, let's test it out, see if it works. Now, one thing I'll mention before I forget, typically anytime we replace a window regulator or a power master switch or anything like that, we have to reset the control unit inside the power window switch, which is in here. I'll link a video on how to do that. That being said, a lot of these more inexpensive window regulators and power switches do not have that auto feature. They won't work. So even if you try to reset it, they don't work. Typically you have to go with all Honda to make it work. So just take that with a grain of salt. But looks like we're going up okay. And we're going down okay. Alright. I'm going to say that's a win. And our handle is nice and secure. And some other things we want to check anytime we remove a door panel and put it back on. We want to make sure that our door opens from the inside. So it's best to leave the window down, shut it, make sure it works. And also that our lock doesn't bind. A lot of times this style door lock that sits in the channel, if that door is not perfectly placed or the door panel is not perfectly placed back on there, this can bind and cause your door locks to not work. Now in this case, these door locks don't work anyway, but just something to be aware of. That's nice and secure. Very happy with that fix. And the door handle works too. Now these door locks were already messed up before we started, so that's not what we were working on today. But you can see it won't lock, but we can lock it with the key. So at least we're good to go there. You know, the owner can unlock them and lock them with the key, which is what they've been doing. But I just wanted to point out, those were already messed up. We didn't break those today. Well, that's it for this one. And as always, if the video helped you out or you liked it, make sure to give it a thumbs up. Thanks for watching.